John is joining us live now, and I believe, John, that you, if even, would consider supporting the Labour Party if they took a different position. Is that correct?
Yeah, leaving party politics aside, I will support anybody that I believe is going to do a great job for Great Britain. I want Britain to be strong again. I want us to be one of the world leaders. I want us to have a strong economy and be able to look after our poorer people. Now, how do you do that? You do that by growing GDP. How do you grow GDP? You encourage the right and correct behaviours for the future. It may not produce instantaneous results. In fact, business never does. But investing, I was asking the Conservative Party for the last 4 years to put into place one of my cornerstones of Cauldwell pandemic recovery, which I launched in March 2020. And one of the cornerstones of that was to encourage businesses from all over the world that have got environmental technologies to come to Britain, and you encourage them by providing them with a tax-free enterprise zone, give them really superb tax benefits. It doesn't cost the taxpayer a penny, but meanwhile what we do is develop world-leading technologies in environmental aspects, so that when these businesses come online, we're selling them all over the world. You carry on with the tax breaks. In fact, I advocate different differential corporation tax rates. So one tax rate for all normal businesses and another tax rate long term for businesses that come and do our bidding, which is really to help save the environment and save the planet. In that way,
Well, I've certainly lost John there, but I mean, I think the point he was making was that it isn't necessarily about politics for him, it's about the long-term future of Britain, which is what our big question is about today here on Talk TV, because, of course, we have seen, actually, politicians across the political divide, and, you know, John was singling out maybe Rishi Sunak, but I think we've seen it from all politicians, them sort of pivoting away from these longer-term visionary projects like HS2, net zero here in Britain, in favour of things like maintaining the triple lock, which is very expensive, but of course helps quite a narrow set of voters who do, however, listen to me, traditionally vote. And that may be part of the appeal to politicians. But I think we've got John back there. John, I'm sorry we lost you there. You were mid-flow about your enterprise zones for green businesses. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, you know, the short, medium and long-term future are all really, really aligned here. The only thing it won't do, attracting these businesses into the UK, is put money into people's pockets immediately. But there is no way of doing that because Britain's between a rock and a hard place at the moment. What we can do is encourage for the future by bringing these businesses into Britain. And one of the ways of encouraging that, of course, as I've already said, is tax breaks. But another way is to be at the cutting edge of technologies that are environmentally friendly. And I think when Boris launched 2030, 5 years ahead of Europe, that signalled to the whole of the world that Britain meant business in the environmental space.
But
and
John, just to slightly push on that, if I may. So, of course, you know, Boris dragged it in from 2035, where Rishi seems to have put it back, and dragged it into 2030. But, of course, you know, Britain, although we make brilliant cars in Nissan up in the northeast and places like Vauxhall in the north of England, Britain is not globally a big car manufacturer. So also, why does the car industry need the government to tell it that it has to get on with doing this? Because, of course, we've learned since Rishi's announcement that the targets about who sells the car, 80% of all cars sold by 2030 still have to be fully electric. So why is that 2030, 2035 target so important when all we're doing is matching what the European Union's doing?
Well, it's one aspect of it, but it's a signalling that Britain means business on the environment. But bear in mind, what I've been advocating is tax breaks to bring companies on all sorts of environmental technologies into Britain to put us ahead of the game with environmental technologies, both from a point of intellectual property and from a point of view of exporting products that we could hopefully manufacture and make Britain really, really booming in the future. Because there's one thing for sure I've got no doubt about, and that is that environmental technology will play a much bigger part in on the GDP of every country in the world.
John,
it'll be vital for us to survive.
I completely agree with you, and your ideas sound... I mean, I just can't believe that the government isn't doing it, by the way. I say that as a former government minister, because for me, as someone born and bred in the north of England, the idea that we can reindustrialise the north with this green industrial revolution is the thing that makes me excited about the future of my kids. I cannot understand why we're not doing more about it. But let me ask you a question. So, you know, obviously you say you're not hearing the right things from Rishi Sunak. You did hear them from Boris Johnson. Do you think Keir Starmer's about to light the blue touch paper on the green industrial revolution in a way that Rishi Sunak isn't? Or do you think that all politicians, which is our big question today here on TalkTV, are not having... You know, we've lost those big visionary politicians who've got that sort of believe in Britain long-term vision for the future. Or is Keir your man?
Well, there's a lot of questions there in one, isn't there? So let's start off with, I generally find all politicians... No, not all. Most politicians relatively inept in doing the right thing for their country. And of course, this is partly driven by the fact that 2 years through a campaign, they've really got to start thinking about electioneering. And electioneering doesn't necessarily sit right with what's best for Britain. So that's one big problem for all politicians. I campaigned with Boris and Rishi in the early days on this enterprise zone and trying to bring in businesses, and somehow it fell on deaf ears. I had several conversations and it just never... They paid lip service to me and said, well, we are sort of doing that, look at Tyneside and so on. But I wanted to be more ambitious than that. I wanted to set a policy around the world that could be achieved because of Brexit, where we offered people incredibly special deals to come and set up in Britain.